Okay guys, so before we start building our first component, let's go back to Figma and check the design first. So as you know, Vue.js is a component-based framework, meaning we are focusing on building a reusable components. So let's imagine a component to a Lego block. So this Lego block has different shape, size, and color. There are some blocks that can only place in specific position. Some are reusable and can be placed to any part of your project. And that same goes in Vue.js. We can consider each part of our app as a single block or a single component, and each has its own value and functionality. So let's try here on our design. I'm saying this card inside has two Lego blocks or component. The first one is the component that contains the number of steps that we are going through. And then the second Lego block or component should be the component contains the details inside of each step, meaning when we click this next step, it should be displaying the step only assigned on step 2 and goes on step 3 and step 4. So let's try to create that. So here in our Vue.js, as you can see, our component folder is empty. Let's create our very first component, and I'm gonna name this as multi-step .view. So be sure to name your components in capital. And from here, I'm gonna type in vbase 3. So I'm going to use vbase 3 setup. And since we have already a styles folder, so we don't need this styles code here. So we can only focus on our styles later. And from here, as you can see again in the design, we have a card here in the middle, and I'm going to name this component as a card. So let's name this class. Let's give it a class name of card. And then this is where we're going to create our two components. And I'm gonna name this image containing these steps as a step container. So let's do that here. Let's create another div dot steps dash container ops dash container. Enter. And from here, I'm going to create a step for this component. Okay, so let's go back to components again and then create steps dot view. And let's do again vbase 3 setup and remove this styles. So from here, we can import this step component from here. We can import this by doing import steps from dot slash steps dot view, and then call this here steps. Okay, so as you can see, we have already the steps component and then the next one should be the component that contains this. So I'm gonna name this component, or yeah, I'm gonna create a div containing details of this component. So let's create again a div or dot step dash form dash details. So since each part of our card has different forms, right? So it's be good if, yeah, if we can name this step form details. Okay, so let's define first the card. So let's go back to global and then style the card. So as you can see, guys, again, since we're using a free version of Frontend Mentor, we don't have any definition on the property that that we have here. We can just use only our instinct, or should I say Frontend Instinct, to style this on our own without relying on the Figma file. Okay, so let's try a height of 550 pixel. Let's move this multi-step here on the left side so we can see that here. Or should we just move this here on the left side and then here so we can see the components? There we go. Okay, so styling the card, dot card, you can just call dot card for class. Then let's give it a height of 550 pixel and the width of 800 pixel. And let's give it a background of $C white. C white again, since we have already a variable called C white or color white. So as you can see, there's nothing happened here in our app because our component is not yet added from our app.view. So let's call that here. Let's remove this and call multi-step. So when I'm typing the component, Vue.js is suggesting us this, so we can just hit enter and then it will automatically import us on our JavaScript. All right, and we can close this. Since this is a single component, we can just use self-closing tag, and it is a confirmation that this is a component when you see it has a different color. Okay, and as you can see here on the design, we already created the style for our card. Okay, so let's try to put this card in the middle. So how can I do that? Let's see. Let's do an inspect. So here's our card, and we have a parent called an ID app. So from this, we can just target this ID and style this. Okay. So probably we're gonna place that here. ID app, and the app should have a height of 100 VH. 100 VH. 100 VH mean viewport height, meaning the height of this container should be all the available spaces on the screen. So if we change this to a shorter height, let's try to drag this. This is still considered 100 VH. All right, so let's go back again. Let's give it a width of 100%, so it should go from left to right of the screen. And then we can use display flex, okay, and then align items. Align items mean align your content horizontally, means from top to bottom. So let's do center, and as you can see, our cards is already vertically centered. And let's add another property. It's called justify content center. All right, so as you can see, our card is already in the middle. And let's go back again to the design. So as you can see here, we have a rounded corners, and the card has a little bit box shadow here on its side. Probably the top and left part has a subtle box shadow, but compared in the right side and in the bottom, they have a bigger shadows. So let's do that. Let's go again in our card. So we have a border radius, and let's try in 15 pixel. Border radius means it will give a rounded corner, 15 pixels to all of its corner. Okay, so here let's create a box shadow, and from top should be 0 pixel, right 4 pixel, bottom 30 pixel, and left should be 5 pixel. And then let's create an RGBA. Or we should just call C black, and then add our opacity of 0.3 or 0.2. So let's check on our design if we got a box shadow. Yep, as you can see, now we have already a box shadow from all of our sides of our card. Okay, all right, so as you can see here, guys, we have a smaller spaces from the corner, or yeah, for all sides of our card. So let's think of that as a white space, and probably this space should be around 10 pixels. So let's do that. Padding 10 pixel. Okay, so now let's define the steps here, and let's style this component. Okay, let's go back to our code, and from our app, okay, we already created the multi-step, meaning this is the parent, and this parent has a step component, and this is the one that we're going to style for. Okay, so let's go back. So again, guys, we name this steps component, right? So I'm thinking of creating a step with a div with a class of dot inside, meaning dot means this circle with a number inside. Okay, so let's do that. So this is the parent. Let's call this steps. And then let's create a div, another div called dot. And then let's try to name this, let's try to create a single number here. Or yeah, let's create a object inside. So const step equals to ref, and this is an array. So let's create an ID, 1, title. Oops, it's not. So this is an array of object. So there's an ID. I'm gonna create an ID, and it should be content 1. Title will be step 1. Step 1, and then as I observe again, there's another what should we name here? Okay, so this is where most of the devs struggles in naming their component. But yeah, it really depends on how you're gonna create your naming convention. Just make sure you remember all the codes that you are creating. All right, so I'm gonna name this step detail or step title. Then your info. All right, so since we have 4, let's repeat this. Shift Alt down, 1, 2, 3. Then let's change the ID to 2, 3, 4. Same goes with the step 2, 3, 4. And from here, let's just move a little bit here so we can see it in our code. Your info, select plan. Let's move a little bit. Add-ons. Or should we add this? And then for the last step, it should be summary. Okay. So now we have already created an object of step, but we first try to build the component and then try to loop that component into this object. Okay, so like what we have here, let's create first the very first step here. So now we have a dot, meaning this is a dot that has a step number. And then we have a details. Let's try to name this as dot details. Should I say div dot dash details? So this is the details of that dot. Okay, so I'm gonna create a span, and add the step 1, and then here I'm going to create another text called P, and then this is the detail, step detail, right? Or dot details. And yep, let's add your info. Okay, so let's try to check that on our. Okay, so let's check what we got here. Try to comment this out. All right, so that's a weird. Vue.js is sending an error with regards to this, but I think it's okay now. So yeah, let's go back. So yeah, let's try to observe again steps here. Okay, we got another error. Ref is not defined. Let's add that. Okay, let's try to remove the ref first. Let's just create a plain array. Okay, the goal is just to display the component first. Okay, so let's go back to the design, and as you can see, guys, we have a card again here inside that contains this image. So how we can do that? Maybe we should create a background for this container and then target that background and create a background for that using this image. And I believe we have already that here in our assets. Yeah, this is called BG sidebar desktop. So just to confirm, we can just use live server. Okay, so this is that side background. Okay, so let's go back and define the step. So inside the card, it's going. We have a steps component, and then from here, we have a div called steps. So let's target that. Okay, I think I missed something here. Yeah, this steps container, I forgot. So we should target this instead of the steps. So from this dot steps container, let's create the height of 100%, and then border radius. Since in the design, as you can see, there is a rounded corner from our image. So let's do that. Let's try 10 pixels. And then, yeah, let's add the background. URL dot assets slash images, since we have assets and images, and then slash bg dash sidebar dash desktop dot svg. So let's hit save. Let's see if that's working. Yeah, it's working. But the problem is there's another background that is not necessarily displaying here. What's the issue with that? We can just use background repeat dash repeat, no repeat. Hit save, and we only got only this part. Okay. Let's see. Let's create a width for this step container, like around 300 pixel. Then the border radius should be 10. Yeah, it's already 10, but the other corner is still not working. Why is that? Ah, I see. Okay, so let's create a background size. 100, cover. There you go. I think the width is not necessary here. Oh yeah, I think we need the width. Let's try to make this width the same as this one. So you can see the circle and the object here are slightly appearing here, but here there's not much appearing inside. So let's remove or reduce the width. Let's try to 50. So let's add more. Yeah, I think it's enough. Okay, so again, we have already the steps background. So let's style this steps now. Okay. Let's put this here and put our steps. Okay, going back to step, we have a class of steps. And then from the steps, we have a dot. So let's try to style first the steps. And that steps are just inside this steps container. Or we can just go outside. So steps. And as you can see here, guys, the dot step here is displaying right next to the two step text here. So how should we do that? We can just use display flex. And as you can see, the step dot is already displaying on the left side of the step text. Okay, so let's add a gap so it has a spacing. So gap would be 20 pixel. Then align items center. All right, so yeah, they are all aligned. And going back, as you can see, guys, there's still a spacing inside this step container. So let's target that step container and create a padding. Let's try around 30 pixel. And yeah, we have a spacing inside. Okay, so now let's try to style now the dot. And then what should we do with this dot? Okay, so from here we can create a height 35 pixel and width of 35 pixel. And as you can see, guys, this dot by default So you can see we have an active version and then there's the default version. Let's try to create first the default version. So as you can see, from the design, we have a circular div here and it only has a border. Let's do that. Border 1 pixel solid $C white, since we have a white variable, and then let's try to put that number in the center. So let's use display flex, align item center, justify content center, and let's make this a circle, border radius of 35 pixel. Okay, so now let's make it a color of white. See white. And as you can see, we have our very first step dot. Let's give the text a little bit highlight, font weight, bold. Okay, so now, yeah, it is a little bit bolder now. Okay, so now we're going to style this step details or dot details. Okay, let's go to another line. Let's call dot dash details. And from this we can target two element, span and p tag. So let's target the span first. We can define the font size of this in 16 pixel. Oops, it's aligning. And then color. So you can see, guys, as you observe, this text is a little bit darker than this white this text at the bottom. So let's give it a opacity of a lighter version. Okay, so let's use RGBA. It's called C white and give it a 50% opacity, 0.5. And for the text, color C white, font weight 600, font size also are the same, 16 pixel. And let's give a margin, since this has a little bit spacing right here. So margin desktop 5 pixel. And let's make the text all capital, since based on the design all the texts are capital. So text dash transform uppercase. Same goes with the span, text dash transform uppercase. So let's check our design. Okay, so we have created our very first step dot and then step details. So let's try to redo this step from to create another step. Okay, guys, so what we need to do here is to render this array of steps into our component. So there's a function called v4 in Vue.js. So from here we can reference our steps array to our v4. Let's call this steps and create a single value that represents a single item in step. So it makes sense if we can just call it step and then type in. Okay, so as you can see, when I hit save, it already created a another 4 items here, but the problem is it only displays a static value. So we can fix that here, but before that we need also to create an attribute called key, so that it makes sure that each of our steps component has a unique ID that can represent our component in their unique ID. So we can just use reference this key into our step. Okay, so now when I hit save and nothing happens, because again our content is still static. So now from the dot we can just replace this. We can just type in double bracket and then call the step, and from here we can access now the property of the step. Okay, so here we can change the dot value to step.id. Okay, so when I hit save, as you can see, it changed this based on the ID of our array. We can also change the title, so double bracket step dot title. Also in our p tag, step dot step title. Okay, so as you can see, the content is now dynamic. And let's go back to our design and let's see what are we missing. So as you can see, guys, there's a spacing from each step compared to our current site. So let's add that. Let's go back to our code and let's inspect this. So from the steps container, we can just target the class .steps. Okay. Let's find the car. So from here, we can just add a margin bottom for about 20 pixel. Let's try that. Oops. Let's try again. Maybe our style is not running. Watch main.sass and then main.css. Okay, so now, so you can see we have a few spacing, and let's go back to our component again in our design. I think we need to add more space, like around 30 pixel. Okay, so I think 30 pixel is enough now. So yep. So the next thing that we need to create now is our step form details on this right side. Okay guys, so before we proceed on building the step form details from the right side of our screen, I'm gonna change something a little bit on the code. And from our single step view, I want this to be a reusable, which means this component should be accepting a prop from their parents, which is the multi-step view. So we need first to move this array of steps from our child to the parent. So let's place it here, and then we need to loop the single step from our step array. So we can just remove this v4 and then paste it here in our step component. So from here, we also added the key value of step, and then let's create a step, another attribute, and we're gonna name it as a step prop. Step prop is the one that accepting a single step or a single object of step from our parent to the child component. Okay, so let's reference this from our single step object. So let's call on step and then hit save. And then from our step.vue, as you can see, it doesn't show anything because we don't have any data to display. That's why it's happening. So here, I just want this component to accept a prop from their parent. So we need to create a const props equals define props, and then this is a function, and we need to create an object here. So let's put the step prop as an object and define this as an object, since we're passing an object inside of this prop. And hit save. Of course, you can see there's an error because it directing on a data that it's not existing from our component. So what is the fix that we need to do here? We just call step prop component, and then from all of this data, they will represent now this step data array that we have from our parent. So it's called step prop and hit save. Oops. All right, so as you can see, it's still working pretty fine. Now let's proceed on creating this step form details here. Okay guys, so before we proceed for step form details, let's check on the Figma design first. So as you can see here, we have 4 steps from our application, and each step is displaying different forms by clicking on the next step. So if we have a personal info, step 2, it will show another form details like selecting your plans, picking add-ons, and so on and so forth. So by having this, we can consider this form details as a different individual component, and we can just name this probably on their titles. Like for example, this one, I can name this personal info.view, plans info.view, and so on and so forth. And this part, guys, it really depends on you on how you're gonna name this. But just in my case, I'm gonna name it based on the title. So let's do that here. So first is to create the component. So from our components folder, let's add a new file, and it's called plans. Personal info.view, and then let's use vbase 3 setup and hit save. And let's add an h1 here, personal info. hit save, and let's check on our multi-step. Let's try to import this by calling directly the personal info. Personal. There you go, as you can see. Now it's showing up right here. So let's check on our code. Why is it doing like this? So I'm gonna remove this. And remove this. Okay, so from the design, we have a title. It's called personal info, and a paragraph named personal. Please provide your name, email address, and phone number. So let's do that here. Let's use a p tag. Provide your name, email, and phone number. Hit save, and there we go. We have the title and the paragraph tag. So I'm gonna name this. I'm gonna name this class as step dash description, and let's hit save. And as you can see, it's displaying from from the bottom and not from here on the right side. So let's do edit the CSS. Okay, so from our CSS, we have the steps container, which is the one that is playing this. And let's minimize some of our classes here. Okay, so I have called this step description here and styled for the h1. Since we have an h1 here, let's add a spacing. Let's check on our design. Yes, it has a small space from the bottom. Or let's do display this first to the right side. So from our global, so I'm gonna comment this again. Let's go on the card because this is the one that contains these two different components. I want this to display from left to right. So let's use display grid. Then grid template columns. So we have a steps container that has already a width, so we can just use this 260 pixels and then remove this. And 260 pixels will be representing the first column, and then 1FR or fraction means the rest of the remaining spaces will be acquired by the second div right here. So let's hit save. Okay, so our SAS is not working, so let's run this again. Then main.css, enter. Oh, it's not. Okay, I have called the wrong folder. So we have in step form, source, and styles. Okay, so from our styles, we have the main.sass and main.css. So let's call on sass -- watch main.sass and then main.css. Enter. There you go. So they are now displaying left to right. And let's add a little bit gap from the middle. 10 pixels, probably. Or not. We can just style this component inside. Okay, so this is the personal info, and now we'll need to add the form here. So from our form info, let's add form, and let's remove this action for now because we don't need it from our build. And then I'm gonna create a div with a class form-group. And then I have a label and an input, so let's do that here. Label for name, and then let's put name. Okay, so we have a name here, and then let's add input, type text. Let's add an ID of name. Then let's create a V model. And then, yeah, so from here, we have already a form and a label. So let's style this first from our components. Our global SAS. Let's add the spacing again. From our design, as you can see, there's a little space from the top. And then from our H1 tag, there's a little space also from our text. So let's do that. So from step description, I'm gonna add padding top 25 pixel. And then for the H1, let's add a little space from the bottom, margin-bottom. Okay, so they have a small space now. And let's target now the p tag, since this is under the step description. And let's change the color to it's a little bit grayish. So I think we have already that variable from our SAS. It's called cool gray. Oops. Let's copy this and call the cool gray. Then the font size will be the font body is equivalent to 16 pixels. $font-body. Okay, so let's check on that. Oh, font-body. Do I? Ah, I see. Sorry about that. I don't have a space, a dash for the font body. Okay, so now let's add a little space from this paragraph to our form group. Let's add margin-bottom 30 pixel. Okay, and now let's style now the form group. So this is the form group, form-group, display flex direction column. Column means it will display from top to bottom. Then margin-bottom 20 pixel. So every form group that we add, there's a space now from each of that form group. Okay, so now let's style the input. Since this is under the form group, input and then form group. The width is now 100%. Height will be 45 pixel. Outline none. Border this radius. The border is a little bit rounded, so let's add that around 7 pixel. And the border is, there's a different borders that we need to add. There's an active, disactive, or a regular style. There's an active state, and then there's a required state. But we will do that later. So let's style first the default style. Okay. So border should be 1 pixel solid. And then I think it's black. So let's call RGBA. So let's add a solid color and then add a small transparency. Do we have C black? Yeah, we have a C black here. Let's call C black. And then 0.1. There you go. So I think it's the same now from the regular style. Okay. The next thing is we need to add a padding here, because as you can see, there's no space inside of the input. So let's add that. Padding 10 pixel. Top and bottom, and then left and right should be 10 pixel. So as you can see, we have now a space from left and right and top to bottom. Let's add a color. Marine blue. And the font weight of 600 pixel. So the focus is this part where we are on a state of typing state. So we need to add the style for that. So let's call on pseudocode and focus. So the border will be 1 pixel solid, and then this is the color of that border. So let's call on, yeah, marine blue. $ marine blue. Let's check on that. So as you can see, there's a regular state, and then when we click the input, the default state for focus is now activated. Okay. So from this input, let's add a placeholder. ex.john. So yeah. Let's check from the design. So this, their name is Stephen King, but from my case, I'm gonna use John for now. But it doesn't matter. At least the style is now complete. Okay. So now let's focus on the style of the label. Check on the label. The label is the same color as the input color or the placeholder color. So let's do that. Let's go on with the label. Font is weight 500. So you can see label is now visible. Color $ marine blue. Okay. Then let's add a little spacing from the bottom. Margin bottom of 5 pixels. Okay. So now you see there's a little bit spacing. Okay, so let's add now the space between this component. So we can target the parent itself. Or yeah, we can do the step form details. So let's go on the step form details. Let's try to find this here. Okay, so I think we haven't styled it yet. So let's add the style for that. Step-form-details. Then padding 10 pixels, 50 pixels. Okay, so as you can see, guys, there's a good spacing now from top, bottom, left, and right. Let's try to reload so we can see the placeholder. And then let's duplicate this form group and add 2 more forms here. Yep. Let's hold on Shift up down twice and let's hit save. So as you can see, we already created 2 copies of name, and then we can just change the content of this: name, email address, and phone number. Phone number. And if we're using a phone number here, of course, we need to change the type to number. And then for the email, we should be writing email. Let's change this ID to email. And then number. Okay, so now the next thing that we need to create is the form at the bottom. So I'm gonna create a div for that. Okay, so I'm gonna add a div with the class of form-buttons here. So this form-buttons here will contain the button at the bottom of our form. So let's go back to the design. So as you can see, we have a 1 button displaying here from the first step, and if the user click on the next step, as you can see in the step 2, we have another button that says go back. So it simply when we click this, it will just go back from the previous step, and from our previous step it doesn't display anything because this is the very first step that we have. Okay, so yeah, let's do that. So from our code, let's add a button here, and it says next step. Okay, so we have our button here at the bottom, and let's style first that button. So as you can see, our code is kind of very long here at the global. So I want to separate the styles for all of the buttons that we have. So from our global, I'm going to create a new SAS file, and it's called buttons. And from here, I'm going to display or style all the buttons that I'm going to add in the future. So, yep. The very first thing I need to do is to create a global style for a global class called btn. So I'm gonna add btn here, and let's add that class also from our button here. So class btn, save, and from our btn I'm gonna add padding of 12 pixels top and bottom, and then 20 pixels left and right. Okay, as you can see, it doesn't show the styles. I think we forgot to import that here on our global or on our main.sass. So I'm gonna import that here. Let's slash global buttons and hit save. Okay, so btn class is now applying the styles. So from here, let's go back to btn again. Gonna add outline none, and then border none to remove the default border style. I'm gonna add also border radius of 7 pixel, so it has a rounded corner from all of the sides. Okay, so I'm gonna add also a cursor pointer and a color, and a color of $say white. And I wanna inherit the styles from our font family, because this button is not inheriting the font family by default. So font-family, I believe it's font-primary. Okay, yeah, it's applying. So let's check again. So this text is kind of a little bit bolder, so let's add a style for that. Font-weight 500, and let's make the text a little bit bigger. Font size 10 pixel. All right, so save that. Okay, so now this is our base btn style. So since we had two different versions of that btn, I'm going to copy still all the base styles from the btn, and then give them a unique style for each. So if this is a btn, I'm gonna have a primary btn and then secondary btn. So let's do that for the primary first, since our button showing here is primary. So let's give this a comment first, so that we know where we are navigating. So this is button, then variant. Let's add variant. So from here, btn-primary. So btn-primary, this is the one that has a blue background here. Okay, so background should be $. Let's check on our variables. Yeah, it's marine blue. Marine blue. Hit save. Then let's add this class to our component, btn primary. Okay, so here's our btn primary, and I wanted this button to display at the bottom of the form. There's a plenty of ways we can do that, but what I'm gonna do is the best way how we can display it at the bottom of our form. Okay, and plus this is also a beneficial since we are reusing this part of our code until we reach the mobile version. So as you can see, uh, the button here is not included from the card itself. So that's why it is very purpose that I used to separate the styles of that here. Okay, so let's go for styling this form button. So this form buttons should probably in a position absolute. So how can we do that? Let's go to our global. Let's minimize some of our codes here. Yep. Then form buttons. Let's minimize this. So that form dash buttons. And I'm gonna add position absolute. And then left will be 0. Bottom will be 0. Okay, so now as you can see, the problem here is that it following the very parent of this application. So what we need to do is to make this form buttons follow this part, is to make the parent of this form button, which is the form details. So let's target this step form dash details. I think we have it here. So we need to add a position relative. So relative means this is the one that absolute child elements are following. So as you can see, it's now following the where is the step form details assigning or residing. Okay, so now to make some space between left and right, since this step form details had a padding, our form buttons is not following that space also. So what we need to do is to position again our form buttons. So let's go back to global. Let's add a custom padding for this one. So adding 0, 50 pixels left and right. All right, so now he's following the same space what we had on step form details. Now what we need to do is to display this on the right side. So how can we achieve that? So since we are displaying this, we need to display this on the right side. I think what we need to target here is the unique class of this button. So since in the future we're going to add a btn again with a different variant, if we target the btn class only, probably this btn button will also following the different styles that we customize from this btn. or this btn primary. So I think we should target only the primary class. Okay, so how can we do that? Let's go to button. Let's add a margin left auto. So when we hit auto, it will display from the right side. Let's see, why is this not following that? Okay, so I think we forgot another style for this. So let's imagine this multi-step, this personal info has another button inside, like go back, let's say. So as you can see, the button margin left auto is not following the margin left, because probably because of the width of this parent is not following the whole width of this container. So what we need to do to give a width of that, we can use the display flex, and then align items, center, justify content, space between. So let's see again, why is this not following btn primary, form buttons. Okay, let's explore this one. Okay, so probably there's no width again. All right, so yeah, that's the problem that we are finding earlier. So we need to add a width for the form buttons. Let's change this to, let's go back to this position. So from form buttons, we need to add a width of 100%. So meaning these form buttons will following the width of the container, which is the step form details. Yeah, the step form details. Okay, so now we can remove this button, because in the next component it will show that on our next component. Okay, so let's observe again, and as you can see, there's a little bit spacing from the bottom of the card, and let's customize that again here. Okay, so since this is following the bottom, very bottom of this container, we can adjust this from 0 to 10 pixel, or let's add more space a little bit. So yep, I think 15 pixels is good. So now we are finished on creating the first component. It is called the personal info. So in the next video, we will create the plans info for this container again.